Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're closing out my mini Valentine's Day series with a love letter in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. The color palette is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. We'll be using two brushes for this entire piece. The first one is my free mono 8 brush, and we use that to create all the illustration elements. And then the lettering was created with my jittery ink brush for my Font Lovers Procreate brush set. And I'll leave links to both of those brushes right in the video description as well. I do want to preface this by saying this is a more advanced tutorial. So in the series, they progressively got more complex. So this one is the most complex out of the three. If you're a beginner with Procreate, I would encourage you to go check out the other two first. The pace will be a little bit quicker for this one because we have a lot to get through. I'm sharing a ton of information here. If at any point in time you want to slow me down, just tap on the gear icon in the lower right corner of the YouTube player and adjust the playback speed. That way you can control how fast or how slow I go if this is too quick. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas that's 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 dpi. I work in the Display P3 color profile, but if you're on an older iPad and don't have access to that, then the default sRGB color profile is perfectly fine. I've got my canvas all ready to go. The first thing we're going to do is drop in our background color. So tap on your layers, hit background color, and select the second pink one up at the top. And now we've got our pink background. The next thing we're going to do is lay out a sketch of our envelope. So I'm going to start with black as my color. If you double tap where the black is, you'll get true black. Feel free to use any brush that you would like for your sketch layer. I'm just going to stick with the mono 8 brush since I already have it selected. So in layer 1, we'll just label this one sketch. For this envelope, since it's a perfect rectangle, I'm going to use my drawing guides. So tap on the wrench and then come to canvas, toggle on drawing guide, and I'm actually just going to leave this one as the default. So whatever you have right here is totally fine. I like the proportions that are on a 5x7 greeting card. I guess 7x5 if you're looking at it landscape. So that's the proportion I want to use for this. So I have a bunch of little squares here, and obviously if I use 7x5, it's going to be super tiny, like way too tiny. So I'm just going to double it. So I'm going to go 14 across by 10 high. So you can just choose anywhere and then we'll readjust it afterwards. So I'll just start in this corner and then I'm just going to count out 14 across. So that's my 14, and then I can go 10 down. All right, so there's my 10 down, so I can connect this. All right, so that's my cute little envelope, or the beginnings of it anyway. So I'm just sliding it over until I find the center point with my crosshairs. This is hand drawn, so I'm giving myself some wiggle room here that it's okay if I'm not perfect everywhere. I still very much want it to have a hand-drawn look. Now that I've got my envelope in here, I can establish the center point right in the middle. So that would be 5 squares down from the top. So it's right here. And if I were to just draw each side, so I'm just going to go from corner to corner right here. And then for the top part, it needs to overlap just slightly, these two edges. So I'm going to have that one come down here. So I usually give myself a little point, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve right here to give it a little bit more character. And if you want to make this more perfect, spend a little more time on it. I like that better. And then I can erase away this part if I want. That way I don't get confused by things. So that's what my envelope's going to look like. And now it's time to start coloring it and creating the final version of this. Since this one is the sketch layer, we can reduce the opacity of it. That way it's just a faint outline and we can draw everything on top of it. I'm going to keep my drawing guides on just for a little bit longer because they do come in handy right here. I'm going to start with the darkest part of this envelope, so it's going to be this bottom section, and then we'll move to the sides, and then we'll finish up with the top one because the top one will be the lightest color. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to label this one bottom, and I'm going to grab this darker brown. There is a darkest brown color right here. I'm going to use that for my shadows. It's a little hard to see, but there is one at the very end, so I'm grabbing this one right before it. And I'm just going to trace. I'm keeping in mind that this bottom one's going to come up to this point. And I'm not going to let it snap to be a straight line because I want that hand-drawn look. So I'm okay if my line's a little bit wobbly here, but I want it to be more straight than wobbly, which is why I have that template at the bottom. Okay, now I can fill it with color. And now we can move on to the sides. I'm going to turn off the visibility of this one. That way it's a little easier to do the sides. Create a brand new layer, label this one sides. The sides are going to be the next one. So it's this middle medium brown color. And I'm going to do both the sides on the same layer. And I'm still looking at this point right here that they're heading towards. Okay, fill the sides with color. And now we're going to turn off the visibility of the sides and create a brand new layer, and this one's going to be top. And the top one's going to be the lightest brown one, so it's the third one up at the top. Okay, fill that one in. And now if we turn on all of our envelope layers and turn off our sketch layer, and we can turn off our guides now, we can see how our envelope's looking. So it's already looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is add some shadows, and this is really going to make it look realistic because our shadows are also going to be a little bit wobbly because, you know, as paper goes through the mail, it bends a little bit, and envelope paper is super thin. So we're going to mimic that by adding some shadows. I love this part. So we're going to have shadows that go underneath this top flap, and then we're going to have a shadow here and a shadow here. So we're going to use that darkest brown color for this, so it's all the way at the very, very end. And I'm going to create a brand new layer underneath the top layer because they need to appear underneath the top flap, but above all the other elements. So I'm going to create a brand new layer and just label this one top shadows. And I'm going to increase my brush size up to like 8% for this. And this one's going to be a little bit wobbly, so I'm just going to start it and just have it come along this edge. And I'm kind of moving my stylus in and out because I want it to look inconsistent here, as if the paper is a little bit warped. So there's my shadow, and I can apply a Gaussian blur to this to make it even more realistic as a shadow. So tap on your magic wand, hit Gaussian blur, layer, and I'm going to drag this up to, I think I want to go like 2.5% here. And I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, that way it blends more seamlessly with the background colors, and reduce the opacity a little bit. I'm going to come down to 50% on this. We're going to repeat the same process for these other sides. So these shadows need to be underneath the sides layer, but above the bottom layer. So I'm going to tap on the bottom layer, create a brand new layer right above it. So now these ones are underneath the sides. I'm going to label this one side shadows. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we just did, only we're going to do it right along here. We're going to blur them the same way we did before, magic wand, Gaussian blur, layer, 2.5%. And then change the blend mode to multiply and reduce the opacity down to 50%. The next thing we're going to do is put a little sticker to close our envelope. So up at the very top, create a brand new layer, label this one heart, and we're going to grab the same color that we used for our background. So it's the second pink color. I'm going to reduce my brush size back down to 5%. Draw a heart, fill it in. I'm going to rotate it just slightly here, and then change the blend mode of this one to soft light. The next thing we're going to do is create a background shadow. That way it looks like it's actually sitting on a surface. So in order to do that, we're going to group all of our layers together. We don't need our sketch anymore. So all of these layers minus the sketch one, hit group. Once you have the group, we're going to duplicate it. So slide it to the left, hit duplicate. We're going to grab the bottom copy of this. We're going to flatten it, tap on the layer thumbnail, and choose select, create a brand new layer right above it, grab the darkest color again, tap on the layer thumbnail, and choose fill layer. So now if we turn off our envelope, we've got that exact envelope right underneath, only it's the start color now, and we can use it as a shadow. So that's the whole point of that. We don't need this bottom copy anymore, so I can delete that. With the shadow layer, let's label this one envelope shadow. With this layer selected, we're just going to apply a Gaussian blur to it. I'm going to come up to 5% for that, change the blend mode to multiply, and reduce the opacity down to 40%. The last thing I'm going to do with this envelope, and then the envelope will be done, is apply a string, so it's going to be nice and tied shut. So in order to do that, we're going to come right above our envelope, create a brand new layer. I'm going to label this one string, and we're going to grab our darkest color and reduce the brush size down to 2%. And I'm just going to draw a bunch of lines coming from the top and going through the center. If you draw a bunch of lines that are just off a little bit and tangling with each other, it looks like string right away. So I'm just going to put like 4 right here, that way it doesn't get overdone. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing across the middle. And then we will tie it shut by putting some loops right here. The next thing that we're going to do is look at a reference photo of forget-me-nots. I thought forget-me-nots would be a really fun flower to pair with this tutorial since it's a love letter. And by looking at this reference image, it'll give us a really good game plan for drawing those forget-me-nots. Everything will make total sense about them. So here's that reference photo. I just want to show you really quick. We've got this dark center. It's surrounded by yellow. Then we have like this white star shape coming around, and then we have 5 petals. So I'm keeping that in mind as I draw all of these. This image, if you want to refer to it or bring it into your own document as you work, it's part of my Flower Photos References Pinterest board, and I'll leave a link in the video description and on screen to that. There's a ton of photos in there with different flower inspirations. So this photo is on there if you want to download it, bring it into your document, take a screenshot, whatever you want. So I'm just going to turn off this image layer and we can move right along. I'm going to begin drawing the forget-me-nots by drawing a stem behind everything that we've done so far. So everything from here on out is going to be beneath what we've already done because we're surrounding our envelope with these elements. So I'm going to tap on the sketch layer, create a brand new layer. This one's going to be called stems. And the color we're going to use for this is the second green color right here. The size of my brush is 3%. So these are going to be my 4 big stems. And then I'm going to draw stems off of them. So this is where we're going to draw all of our flowers, and you can draw these however you would like. Now that we have our 4 different sections, we're going to start creating the flowers. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. This one I'm just going to call brown. So on the brown layer, we're going to use this brown color right here at the bottom. So all of these colors down here are going to be part of our flowers. So grab the brown, I'm going to increase my brush size up to 8%. And on top of each one of these little stem sections, I'm just going to put a dot. Once you have that done, create a brand new layer underneath the brown layer and label this one yellow. We're going to grab our yellow color. I still have the same size brush, so it's 8%, and I'm just going to draw that circle around each one of these. Once you have your yellow, now we're going to do our white stars. So create a brand new layer underneath the yellow layer. Label this one white stars. We're going to grab the white color down at the bottom, reduce the size down to 4. And for each one of these, we're just going to make it kind of look like a little sun. Now we are going to start drawing in our petals. And we need to draw 5 petals on each one of these. So I'm going to grab my lightest blue color. I have 3 blues right here, and I want to change up the petal colors just slightly, and that will give a sense of depth while you're working as well. So I'm going to start with the lightest one first, and we're going to leave some open ones so we can add in those other shades as we move along. So I'm going to grab the light blue color. I'm going to create a brand new layer right underneath my white stars layer, and label this one light blue. And I'm going to keep my brush size at 3% for this. Wherever I have 2 that are touching, if I make one of them the light blue color, I don't want to draw petals on this one because it's going to be the same color and those same color petals are going to be touching. This is a great opportunity to introduce depth just by changing up the shade of blue. So I'm going to leave this one alone for now, and I'm going to use a different color blue on this one. So just be aware of that. And we've got 2 different shades of blue still to go. We've got a medium and a dark. So make sure you leave enough free. That way you can use those other colors and there will be a good variety throughout your little bunches. Okay, once you have your light blue, let's create a brand new layer underneath it. Label this one medium blue. Grab your medium blue and repeat the exact same process, leaving a few left over so we can add the dark blue in. Create a brand new layer underneath the medium blue layer. Label this one dark blue. Grab the darkest blue and finish them off. So now that we have all of our flowers drawn in, now's a great time to adjust the placement of these. Like I want this one to be brought down just a little bit closer, and I want this one to maybe be brought down a little bit closer and tucked in a little bit more. We have to make sure that we group all of these together, and make sure you're on the latest iOS version and Procreate version before you try to do what I'm about to show you can do, and everything will go super smooth. So I'm going to group all of my elements together that are part of my forget-me-nots. So group, and then label this one forget-me-nots. So it's collapsed, it's toggled up, it's not open like this. We've got it collapsed. Make sure this is selected. Come up here, grab your selection tool. Make sure freehand is selected and add is selected down here. And then I can draw around the different pieces. And even though they're part of different groups, I can move them all together as one piece right here, and I can rotate them. So that's super, super handy for stuff like this. I'm going to do the exact same thing with this one. And then I think we're going to bring these ones just in just a little bit closer. Once you have these placed where you want them to go, now we're just going to surround everything with a bunch of leaves, and we're going to change up the depth. We've got different colored leaves as well. So I'm going to start with the lightest color leaves first, and then we'll add in the darker ones, and then everything else will go super smoothly after that. So all of my leaves are going to be behind my forget-me-nots, so I'm going to tap on the sketch layer, create a brand new layer. This one's going to be light leaves, and I'm going to grab the medium green color here. Don't grab the light green, grab the medium one, and you'll see why in just a minute. So I'm just going to leave my brush size where it's at. It's at 3%. And I'm going to draw some big leaves around here. If it's hard to tell if you've got a closed path here because we're going to fill these in, I don't like using the selection method to recolor because I like the softer edge that my brush gives me. So I can just turn off my group and leave the shadow on, and then I know exactly where I'm drawing in relation to the envelope. That's how I like drawing these leaves in. That way I still have an idea of where I'm at. So we're going to add some details to these lighter green ones. So I'm going to create a brand new layer right above the light leaves. This one's going to be called Details. I'm going to create a clipping mask, so tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask. I'm going to change over to my lightest green color for this, and I'm going to reduce my brush size down to 2%. And I'm going to put in some details. So I'm just going to draw a line all the way down and then do these V shapes. Okay, we've got our light leaves all done, and now we're going to add in some dark leaves behind them. So come down to your sketch layer, create a brand new layer right above it, label this one dark leaves. We're going to grab our darkest green color and just add some supporting leaves right behind your light leaves. Okay, let's turn on our envelope again and see how everything looks. So I'm going to group all of my leaves together. Let's label this one leaves. The very last thing we need to do is add in a message on here. It feels a little empty without one. So for this message, I'm going to have the lettering overlap a few elements. That way it ties everything together. I'm going to grab, let's start with the color. I'm going to grab this dark pink color. I'm going to create a brand new layer in my leaves layer for the lettering because I want my lettering to be above the dark leaves but behind everything else. That way I have a really pretty overlap. So I'm going to tap on dark leaves, create a brand new layer, and label this one lettering. I've already grabbed my dark pink color for this. I'm going to switch into my Font Lovers Procreate brush set, and I'm going to grab my jittery ink brush, and I'm going to write out the word special delivery, but you can also use editable text if you'd like for this, or change up the phrase to whatever you would like. So that's how to create a love letter surrounded by forget-me-nots in Procreate. Once again, links to everything mentioned in this tutorial are right in the video description, including the free color palette, the free mono weight brush, and a link to the Font Lovers Procreate brush set. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is Every Tuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.